Have you ever had a moment that completely changed the trajectory of your life? For me, it was a random Tuesday afternoon at the park with my daughter when my boss, yes, my actual boss, came sprinting toward me and landed directly on my lap. But what happened next? That's where things get complicated. I never expected to be raising my 6-year-old daughter alone. I never expected to be working under the most intimidating CEO in the publishing industry. And I certainly never expected that both of these realities would collide in a way that would leave me questioning everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and second chances. The truth is, by the time Olivia Montgomery sat on my lap that day, I was already falling for her, something I'd sworn I'd never do again after my wife walked out. But when I felt her trembling against me, heard the fear in her voice, and saw the man stalking toward us through the park, I realized there was much more to my Ice Queen boss than met the eye. What I didn't know then was that protecting her that day would put both of us in danger that went far beyond an angry ex-boyfriend. Daddy, higher. Emma squealed, her little legs pumping as I pushed her on the swing. Any higher and you'll touch the clouds. Pumpkin. I laughed, giving another gentle push. The park was relatively empty for a Tuesday afternoon. Just a few other parents with their kids, an elderly couple feeding birds, and me, Jake Sullivan, 34-year-old single dad, trying to make the most of the 2 hours I had before I needed to return to the office. Being senior editor at Pinnacle Publishing meant I could occasionally slip away during lunch breaks to see Emma, especially on days when Mrs. Hernandez, our neighbor who watched her after school, had doctor's appointments. These stolen moments were precious. My daughter growing before my eyes, her mother missing all of it by choice. I checked my watch 20 more minutes before we needed to head back, 20 minutes before I returned to the scrutiny of Olivia Montgomery, CEO and publishing powerhouse who'd taken over Pinnacle last year and proceeded to turn everything upside down with her exacting standards and seemingly impossible expectations. Daddy, who's that lady running? Emma asked, her swing slowing. I turned to look where she was pointing and felt my heart skip. Speak of the devil. Olivia Montgomery herself was sprinting across the park lawn in our direction, her usual perfect composure completely absent. Her long, silky blonde hair was flying behind her, designer heels in one hand, her face a mask of panic. Before I could process what was happening, she spotted me. Jake. She gasped, relief flooding her features, and then she was there practically diving onto my lap, her arms wrapping around my neck as she buried her face against my shoulder. Please, she whispered, her voice shaking. Pretend we're together. He's following me. I instinctively wrapped an arm around her waist, feeling her trembling against me. Easy. I whispered against her hair. I've got you. Emma was staring at us, her little face scrunched in confusion. Daddy, why is your boss sitting on you? Olivia tensed against me, and I could feel her heart hammering through her silk blouse. I followed her terrified gaze to where a tall man in an expensive suit was scanning the park, his face contorted with anger. Emma, sweetheart, I said calmly, though my own pulse was racing. This is Ms. Montgomery. She's playing a game of hide-and-seek with us. Isn't that fun? Emma's eyes widened with excitement, completely oblivious to the tension. I love hide-and-seek. I pulled Olivia closer, one hand moving to stroke her hair in what I hoped looked like an intimate gesture to anyone watching. Who is he? I murmured against her ear. Ex-boyfriend, she whispered back. Richard. He doesn't take rejection well. The man Richard spotted us then, his eyes narrowing as he took in the scene. Olivia curled on my lap, my daughter swinging beside us, the picture of a happy family. He hesitated, uncertainty crossing his features. I made a split-second decision, leaning forward to press a gentle kiss to Olivia's temple. La, I whispered, like I just said something funny. She did. A melodic sound that seemed to transform her entire being. I'd never heard Olivia Montgomery laugh before. In the office, she was all business. Sharp suits, sharper tongue, and an icy demeanor that had earned her the nickname Snow Queen among the staff. Richard watched for another long moment before turning away, his shoulders rigid with frustration. He's leaving, I murmured, but kept my arm firmly around her waist. Give it a few minutes to be sure. Olivia nodded against my shoulder, her breathing gradually slowing. I became acutely aware of her weight on my lap, the subtle scent of her perfume, the silkiness of her hair against my jaw. This was my boss. The woman who had criticized my latest acquisition just yesterday, who had the entire office walking on eggshells, vulnerable and clinging to me like I was her lifeline. Ms. Montgomery, do you want to push me on the swing? Emma asked, completely unaware of the tension surrounding us. Olivia lifted her head, her blue eyes meeting mine briefly before she turned to my daughter with a smile that transformed her face. I'd love to, Emma, and you can call me Olivia. As she slid off my lap and moved to push my daughter, I couldn't help but stare. Who was this woman? And what had she done with my intimidating boss? What I didn't realize then was that this chance encounter would entangle our lives in ways I could never have imagined, and that the man walking away wasn't simply giving up. He was plotting something far more dangerous than a confrontation in a park. You didn't have to walk us home, Olivia said as we approached her brownstone in the upscale part of the city, far from my modest apartment. After the park incident, I'd insisted on escorting her home, unwilling to leave her alone when she was clearly shaken. Emma skipped ahead of us, fascinated by the elegant neighborhood and chattering about the pretty houses. I think I did, I replied, scanning the street for any sign of Richard. That guy didn't look like the type to give up easily. She hugged her arms around herself, vulnerability showing through the cracks in her usually flawless composure. I'm sorry for involving you in my mess. This isn't exactly professional, I laughed. Well, sitting on your employee's lap probably crossed the professional line already. A flush colored her cheeks. God, I can't believe I did that. I just panicked. I saw you there and you were familiar and I looked like good boyfriend material. I teased. The smile that curved her lips made something twist in my chest. You looked safe, she said softly. We reached her front steps and Emma ran back to us. Your house is like a castle, Miss Olivia. Olivia knelt to Emma's level, something I'd never imagined the formidable CEO doing. Thank you, Emma. Would you and your dad like to come in for some hot chocolate? It's the least I can do after interrupting your part-time. Emma looked up at me with pleading eyes. Can we, Daddy, please? I hesitated. This was strange territory. My boss inviting us into her home, the same boss who just hours ago had been criticizing my work performance. But the woman before me now, with her guard down and genuine warmth in her eyes as she spoke to my daughter, seemed like a completely different person. Sure, I found myself saying, hot chocolate sounds great. Inside, Olivia's home was both elegant and surprisingly comfortable. Modern art on the walls, but also plush couches and bookshelves overflowing with well-worn novels. As she moved to the kitchen to prepare our drinks, I noticed a framed photo on a side table, a younger Olivia with an older woman who had the same striking blue eyes. My mother, she said, noticing my gazes. She returned with mugs. She passed away 3 years ago. I'm sorry, I said, accepting the steaming mug. Were you close? Something flickered in her eyes, pain quickly masked. She was everything to me. After my father left when I was 4, it was just us against the world. The parallel to my own situation with Emma wasn't lost on me. Single mom, huh? That couldn't have been easy. It wasn't, she said, watching as Emma explored the bookshelves with careful fingers. But she was incredible. Built her own business from nothing. Made sure I never felt like I was missing out. She paused, a shadow crossing her face. That's why I can't, with Richard. He reminded me too much of my father, charming on the surface but controlling underneath. I nodded, understanding dawning. How long were you together? 8 months, too long. She sipped her chocolate. He seemed perfect at first, successful, attentive. By the time I realized how possessive he was, how he was trying to isolate me from friends, dictate my career moves, I was already in deep. But you got out. I pointed out. Her eyes met mine. Last week he didn't take it well. Emma came bounding over, chocolate mustache adorning her upper lip. Miss Olivia has Harry Potter books. Daddy, all of them. Olivia smiled, reaching out to wipe the chocolate from Emma's face with a napkin. The gesture was so maternal, so natural, it caught me off guard. Harry Potter was my favorite growing up, she told Emma. I used to pretend I was Hermione. Me too. Emma gasped, eyes wide with delight. I watched them, this unexpected connection forming between my daughter and my boss, and felt something shift inside me. The Olivia Montgomery in the office, demanding, critical, sometimes downright intimidating, seemed worlds away from this woman gently discussing favorite characters with my 6-year-old. You're good with her, I said later, as Emma explored the small garden behind Olivia's brownstone. Olivia's smile held a touch of sadness. I always wanted children. It just never happened. The vulnerability in her admission struck me. How many layers were there to this woman I thought I knew? As we prepared to leave, Olivia knelt to Emma's level again. Thank you for sharing your daddy with me today when I needed help, she said seriously. You're very lucky to have him. Emma nodded solemnly. He's the best daddy. Mommy didn't think so, but she was wrong. I winced at my daughter's blunt assessment, but Olivia just squeezed her hand. Well, I think your daddy is pretty special too. Her eyes lifted to meet mine, and something electric passed between us. A recognition perhaps of shared wounds and unexpected connection. What I didn't know then was that our moment of peace was temporary. Richard had seen us together, had followed us, and was now watching Olivia's home from across the street, his jealousy and obsession building into something dangerous, and he wasn't working alone. The next morning at the office was surreal. Olivia swept past my desk in her usual impeccable attire. Today, a tailored navy dress that highlighted her perfect figure with barely a nod of acknowledgement. If not for the slight softening around her eyes when they met mine, I might have imagined the entire previous day. Sullivan, I need the Mercer manuscript on my desk by noon. She called over her shoulder, every inch the demanding CEO. My colleague Tom leaned over. Ice Queen's on the warpath today. What did you do to piss her off? I shrugged, unable to explain the complexity of what had transpired between Olivia and me. Just the usual. But as the day progressed, I noticed small changes. A coffee appeared on my desk exactly how I liked it, though I'd never told her my preference. The criticism of my latest acquisition was delivered with constructive suggestions rather than her usual cutting remarks. And twice, I caught her watching me from her office, her expression thoughtful. At lunch, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Thank you again for yesterday. I've been thinking about Emma all morning. She's wonderful. Asterisk." I smiled, typing back. "She hasn't stopped talking about Miss Olivia and her Harry Potter books." 3 dots appeared, disappeared. Then asterisk. "Would it be completely inappropriate to ask if you both might like dinner sometime? As a thank you asterisk." My heart rate picked up. Was my boss asking me on a date? Or was this just gratitude? And why did the distinction matter so much to me suddenly? "We'd love that asterisk," I replied before I could overthink it. The response came quickly. "Is tonight 700 p.m. I'll cook asterisk." As I stared at my phone, Tom whistled low. "Must be some text to put that look on your face. Hot date." "Something like that," I murmured, still processing the invitation. What I didn't see was Richard watching the building from his car across the street, his face darkening as he observed the Pinnacle Publishing offices. I didn't know that he had connections to our biggest rival publishing house, or that his obsession with Olivia was about to become professional as well as personal. Dinner at Olivia's was nothing short of revelatory. She'd prepared a simple but delicious pasta that even my picky Emma devoured, and the conversation flowed with surprising ease. The corporate mask had completely fallen away, revealing a woman with a sharp, witty sense of humor that matched my own, who listened intently to Emma's school stories and who gradually shared pieces of herself I suspected few people ever saw. "So why the different personness?" I finally asked as we sat on her patio after Emma had fallen asleep on the couch inside. "The Olivia at work versus this Olivia?" She swirled the wine in her glass, considering. "When my mother died and I took over her company, it was struggling. The board, all men were circling like vultures, ready to push me out and sell it off piece by piece." Her eyes hardened at the memory. I learned quickly that being liked wasn't going to save her legacy. Being feared and respected would, and it worked. I acknowledged. Pinnacle had flourished under her leadership. Despite initial skepticism, it did. But sometimes I wonder what I've sacrificed along the way. Her gaze drifted to where Emma slept. Connection, authenticity, the chance for a real life outside those office walls. "It's not too late," I said softly. Her eyes met mine. Vulnerability and hope wearing in their blue depths, isn't it? The Ice Queen and the Single Dad. Sounds like a disaster waiting to happen. Or the beginning of a great story, I countered, surprising myself with my boldness. And I happen to know a thing or two about great stories. A smile curved her lips. "You're good at your job, Jake. I've always thought so, even when I'm being critical." High praise from the Ice Queen herself, I teased. "Don't call me that," she said. But she was laughing. "What should I call you then?" I asked, suddenly serious. She set down her wine glass and moved closer, her eyes never leaving mine. "Just Olivia, just me." The kiss that followed was gentle at first, tentative, both of us aware of the lines we were crossing, the complications we were inviting. But when her hand came up to cut my face, something broke loose inside me. It had been so long since I'd been touched with such tenderness, since I'd allowed myself to want someone this way. When we finally pulled apart, her eyes were wide with wonder. "I didn't plan this," she whispered. "Neither did I admitted. "But I'm not sorry." She rested her forehead against mine. "This is complicated. Jake, I'm your boss. You have Emma to think about. And Richard, the mention of her ex sobered us both. Has he contacted you again?" She hesitated. "Just some texts. Nothing threatening, just persistent." I blocked his number. What neither of us knew was that at that very moment, Richard was implementing a plan that would threaten not just our budding relationship, but the entire future of Pinnacle Publishing, and that his obsession with Olivia had evolved into something far more dangerous than either of us could have imagined. The next few weeks unfolded in a delicate balance, professional distance at the office, with only the occasional lingering glance or brush of hands to betray the growing connection between us, an increasingly intimate evening spent together with Emma, who had completely fallen in love with Miss Olivia and her endless supply of books and stories. We were careful, cautious about defining what was happening between us. Both of us carried scars, me from my wife's abandonment, Olivia from a lifetime of putting career before personal happiness, and hovering in the background was the unresolved threat of Richard, who seemed to have disappeared but whose presence we both felt like a shadow. Then came the board meeting that changed everything. "We have a serious problem," Olivia announced, her CEO persona firmly in place as she addressed the board. "Someone has been leaking our acquisition plans to Apex Publishing. They've outbid us on 3 major manuscripts in the past month." The boardroom erupted in concerned murmurs. I sat quietly watching Olivia command the room with the confidence I'd first found intimidating but now understood was her armor. "How serious is the damage?" asked Gerald, the oldest board member. "Serious enough," Olivia replied. The Patterson deal is in jeopardy, and they've approached Michaels about her next series. My stomach dropped. Those were two of our biggest potential acquisitions, projects I'd been personally shepherding. Do we have any idea who's behind the leak? I asked. Olivia's eyes met mine briefly. Not yet, but I've hired a security consultant to investigate. Until then, all acquisition discussions will be limited to senior staff only. After the meeting, she called me into her office, closing the door behind us. It's Richard, she said without preamble, her voice low. He's connected to Apex through his college roommate, their current CEO. I stared at her. You think he's using corporate espionage as what? Revenge? I know it sounds paranoid, she admitted, running a hand through her silky hair. But the timing is too coincidental. The leak started right after I ended things with him. Have you told the board your suspicions? She shook her head without proof. They already think I'm too emotional for this job. If I start accusing my ex-boyfriend of corporate sabotage, I moved closer, fighting the urge to take her hand in the glass-walled office where anyone could see us. What can I do? Her eyes softened. You're already doing it. Just be there. What neither of us realized was that Richard's plan went far beyond simple corporate sabotage. He wasn't just trying to hurt Olivia's company. He was systematically working to dismantle her entire life piece by piece. Daddy, why is that man taking pictures of our house? Emma asked one morning as we were leaving for school. I froze, following her pointing finger to a car parked across the street. The driver quickly pulled away when he realized he'd been spotted. That evening, I told Olivia about the incident. Her face palled. Jake, I'm so sorry. I never meant to bring this into your life, into Emma's life. Hey, I said firmly, taking her hands in mine. This isn't your fault. Richard is the one crossing lines here. She looked down at our intertwined fingers. Maybe we should cool things off for a while until this blows over. Is that what you want? I asked, my heart sinking. Her eyes met mine, vulnerable and afraid. No, but I'm scared, Jake. Not for me. For you and Emma. I couldn't bear it if something happened to either of you because of me. I pulled her close, breathing in the now familiar scent of her hair. We're stronger together than apart. Whatever he's planning, we'll face it together. That night, as Emma slept and Olivia lay, curled against my side, I made a silent promise to protect them both, no matter what came next. What I didn't know was how soon that promise would be tested. The next morning, I arrived at work to find the office in chaos. Overnight, someone had leaked emails between Olivia and the board. Emails taken out of context to make it appear she was planning to sell off divisions of the company and lay off staff. It's not true, she insisted as panicked employees demanded answers. Those emails were discussing worst-case scenarios, not actual plans. But the damage was done. Trust was shattered and rumors spread like wildfire. By lunchtime, 3 senior editors had resigned and authors were calling in panic about their contracts. I found Olivia in her office, staring out the window, her usual perfect posture now defeated. That was Richard, she said without turning. He must have hacked my email somehow. I closed the door behind me. We need to go to the police. She shook her head. With what evidence? And even if we could prove it was him, the damage is already done. She finally turned to face me, her eyes red, rimmed but dry. My mother built this company from nothing. Jake, it was her life's work. And now I'm watching it crumble because I made the mistake of letting the wrong man into my life. This isn't over, I insisted. The board knows you. They trust you. Do they? She asked bitterly. Or do they see what everyone else sees? The Ice Queen who's too ambitious for her own good. I moved closer. Caution forgotten. That's not who you are. And anyone who's taken the time to really know you understands that. Her expression softened. Like you have. Like I have, I confirmed, taking her hand. And we're gonna fight this together. What we didn't know then was that Richard's vendetta was about to escalate in ways neither of us could have anticipated, and that the final confrontation would force both of us to face our deepest fears and strongest truths. 3 days later, the board called an emergency meeting. Despite our best efforts to contain the damage, Pinnacle's stock had plummeted and authors were jumping ship to competitors, including Apex, which was all too happy to capitalize on our misfortune. The board has lost confidence in your leadership, Gerald informed Olivia, his expression grave. We're offering you the chance to resign gracefully before we're forced to take more drastic action. I watched the color drain from her face. Everything she'd worked for, everything her mother had built, slipping away. Because of one man's obsession. I request 24 hours, she said, her voice steady despite the devastation I knew she was feeling. Before you make your final decision, Gerald exchanged glances with the other board members before nodding reluctantly. 24 hours. But unless you can miraculously restore confidence in this company, I don't see how the outcome will change. As we left the boardroom, I pulled her into an empty conference room. What's your plan? For the first time since I'd known her, Olivia Montgomery smiled with genuine mischief. Who says I have a plan? Because I know you, I replied, and you don't go down without a fight. Her smile widened. You're right, and I'm going to need your help. That night, after putting Emma to bed, I joined Olivia at her dining table, now covered with papers, laptops, and coffee cups. Together with her security consultant, a former FBI agent named Diana, we pieced together the evidence of Richard's sabotage. It's not enough for a criminal case, Diana warned, but it might be enough to convince the board. And if it isn't, I asked. Olivia's eyes met mine across the table. Then I walk away with my head held high, knowing I fought for what matters. Her hand found mine, and knowing I found something even more important along the way. The tenderness in her voice made my heart swell. Whatever happened tomorrow, whatever Richard had done, he hadn't succeeded in breaking her spirit or what was growing between us. What none of us expected was for Richard himself to make an appearance at the board meeting the next day. I believe I can shed some light on Pinnacle's recent troubles, Richard announced, striding into the boardroom uninvited, looking every inch, the successful businessman in his tailored suit. Olivia froze beside me, her knuckles white as she gripped the edge of the table. Mr. Harrington, this is a private meeting. Gerald began, but Richard cut him off. I think you'll want to hear what I have to say. He placed a flash drive on the table. This contains evidence that Olivia Montgomery has been deliberately sabotaging her own company to drive down its value before a planned management buyout. The accusation was so outrageous that for a moment no one spoke. Then Olivia stood her composure, remarkable given the circumstances. That's an interesting theory, Richard, especially coming from someone who's been working with Apex Publishing to undermine Pinnacle since our breakup. Richard's confident smile faltered slightly. That's absurd, is it? Olivia nodded to Diana, who distributed folders to each board member. These are records of communications between Richard Harrington and Apex CEO Marcus Wells dating back to the day after I ended our relationship. They detail exactly which Pinnacle projects to target and when. The board members began flipping through the documents, murmuring among themselves. Richard's face darkened. This is a desperate attempt to shift blame for your own failures. Perhaps Olivia conceded, or perhaps it's the truth. She turned to the board. I've made mistakes. I should have recognized Richard's obsessive behavior sooner. I should have been more transparent with all of you about the threats Pinnacle was facing. But I have never, not once, betrayed this company or my mother's legacy. Her voice broke slightly on the last words, and without thinking, I reached for her hand under the table. She squeezed back, drawing strength. Richard's eyes narrowed at the gesture. So this is why you left me for one of your employees? He laughed bitterly. How professional, Olivia. My personal life is not the issue here. She replied evenly. Your corporate espionage is. You have no proof? Actually, Diana interjected. We do. She nodded to the security guard at the door, who stepped aside to reveal a nervous-looking young man. This is Kevin Morris, IT specialist at Apex. He's agreed to testify about the instructions he received to hack Ms. Montgomery's email accounts. Richard's face contorted with rage. He spat at Olivia. You think you've won. You think anyone will want you after this? You're nothing without me. Nothing. As security moved to escort the now shouting Richard from the room, I felt Olivia trembling beside me. But when I looked at her face, I saw not fear but relief. The relief of finally being free from his shadow. The board meeting continued for hours after Richard's dramatic exit. Questions were asked, explanations given, apologies made on both sides. By the end, though, Pinnacle still faced significant challenges. Olivia's position was secure and the company had a fighting chance to rebuild. As we finally left the building that evening, exhausted but victorious, Olivia stopped on the steps, looking up at the night sky. My mother used to say that the true measure of success isn't avoiding falls, but how gracefully you rise afterward, she said softly. I took her hand, drawing her close. You rose pretty damn gracefully today, she laughed. The sound light and free in a way I'd never heard before. We did together. Together, I agreed and kissed her under the stars, no longer caring who might see. 6 months later, Pinnacle Publishing had not only recovered, but was thriving under Olivia's leadership, now tempered with a new openness and collaborative spirit that had transformed the company culture. The Ice Queen nickname was long forgotten, replaced by genuine respect and admiration. As for us, we'd taken things slowly, mindful of Emma's feelings and the complexities of our professional relationship. But some things are simply meant to be. Daddy, is Olivia going to live with us forever now? Emma asked one evening as the three of us built a pillow fort in my living room. Olivia and I exchanged glances, a silent conversation passing between us. Would you like that pumpkin? I asked carefully. Emma nodded enthusiastically. Yes. She makes the best pancakes, and she does all the Harry Potter voices right, and she makes you smile all the time. She makes me smile too, Olivia said, reaching out to tuck a strand of hair behind Emma's ear. You both do. Later that night, with Emma asleep and the two of us curled together on the couch, I finally asked the question that had been on my mind for weeks. Move in with us, I said simply, not because it's practical or convenient, but because I love you, because Emma loves you, because we're better together than apart. Olivia's eyes shimmered with tears. Are you sure? Your life was complicated enough before I came along with all my baggage. My life was half lived before you sat on my lap in that park. I corrected her, and I wouldn't trade a single moment of complication if it meant not having you in our lives. She laughed through her tears. When did you become such a romantic? I'm an editor, I reminded her. I know a good story when I'm living it. Her answer was a kiss that held all the promise of our future. Complicated, challenging, but infinitely worth it. Life doesn't always give us what we expect. Sometimes it gives us what we need in the most unexpected packages. A chance encounter in a park, a boss on your lap, a whispered "easy, I've got you." That becomes a promise kept through the hardest of times. For Olivia, Emma, and me, our story didn't end with happily ever after. It began there with the understanding that love isn't about perfect people finding each other, but imperfect people choosing each other day after day through all of life's complications. And if you're wondering if the Ice Queen and the single dad could really make it work, well, 2 years later, as I watch my wife reading bedtime stories to our daughter, her hand resting protectively on her growing belly where our son is kicking impatiently, I can tell you that some risks are worth taking, some complications are worth embracing, and some loves are worth fighting for, no matter how unlikely they might seem at first glance. If you enjoyed this story of unexpected love and second chances, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming content that reminds us all that life's most beautiful chapters often begin with its most challenging moments. And we'd love to know where in the world are you watching from. Share your country in the comments below, and let us know if you've ever had an unexpected encounter that changed your life forever.